On the 45th floor of a luxurious skyscraper, a black janitor quietly cleaned the halls late at night. But the calm didn't last long. A manager humiliated her, pouring an entire glass of water over her head in front of everyone. Days later, another executive slapped her across the face in a conference room. No one spoke up. Not a single person defended her. What they didn't know was that the woman they looked down on was actually the daughter of the company's founder, a young CEO about to make them regret everything they'd done. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so we can meet again tomorrow with another unforgettable story. The scent of disinfectant clung to the polished marble floors of the 45th executive level at Sterling Horizon Tower. It was just past 10 p.m., and the city of Chicago glittered through the towering windows like a constellation brought down to earth. The office was silent, save for the low hum of distant servers and the occasional creak of shifting ventilation ducts. This floor, immaculate and bathed in soft recessed lighting, was the domain of senior executives and VPs. People who made million-dollar decisions before noon and flew out by sunset for panels in San Francisco or conferences in London. But tonight, beneath the veneer of power and precision, walked a woman no one would recognize. Her name tag read Nia Walker, a black cleaner. She wore a simple worker's uniform, her hands bare and her curls tucked neatly beneath a plain cap. To the world, she was invisible. But beneath that disguise stood Imani Carter, 29 years old, Ivy League educated, recipient of Forbes 30 Under 30, and daughter of Benjamin Carter, the very founder of Sterling Horizon Technologies. She was the company's youngest ever vice president of innovation, a brilliant strategist who had once closed a billion-dollar green tech partnership in Tokyo with nothing more than a keynote and a whiteboard. But none of that mattered here. Not tonight. Her fingers tightened slightly around the handle of the mop as she moved it rhythmically across the floor of the main corridor, just outside the executive meeting room. Her body ached in places she never knew could ache, shoulders burning from the constant sweeping motion, lower back sore from stooping over corners no executive would ever think to check. Every movement was watched by no one. Every task she completed was silently absorbed into the background of an empire she was supposed to one day run. She paused to wring out the mop when she heard the measured, precise footsteps echoing on tile. Expensive shoes by the sound of them. It was the kind of stride that came with authority earned or demanded. She looked up slowly to meet the icy blue eyes of Colin Graves, the 47-year-old operations floor supervisor. His salt and pepper hair was gelled into place, his shirt starched to perfection. Still working on this hallway? The tone was low, clipped, and laced with annoyance. He didn't recognize the woman before him. Of course not. Not without the heels, the designer glasses, the tailored suits that usually made people listen when she spoke. Tonight, she was just another night cleaner. Unimportant, interchangeable, unseen. "I just finished this section, sir," she said quietly, trying to maintain the tone she'd practiced. Submissive, efficient, non-threatening. Colin raised an eyebrow. "Looks streaky to me." "You used the wrong solution," he said, his gaze fixed on the floor, then down to her cleaning cart. Then finally to her with a sneer. "You people never learn. You people." It slid off his tongue so easily. Imani swallowed the response that burned in her throat. She had to stay in character. "I'll redo it, sir," she said, gripping the mop tighter. Colin leaned in closer. "No, I think you need a real reason to do it properly this time." He reached for a full cup of water sitting on a console table. Imani's eyes tracked the motion with growing alarm, but her body didn't move. With calculated deliberateness, Colin raised the cup and poured the entire contents over her head. The water was ice cold. It soaked through her cap, her curls, her collar. "There," Colin said casually, setting the empty cup on the floor beside her. "Now you've got something real to clean up." Imani stood frozen, water dripping from her face, forming a puddle at her feet. It wasn't the cold that hit the hardest. It was the cruelty, the deliberate, premeditated humiliation. In that instant, Imani Carter ceased to be the undercover cleaner named Nia Walker. But she didn't break cover. Instead, she bent down, slowly, picked up the mop and began again. This was the beginning of something far bigger, and Colin Graves had no idea what kind of storm he had just invited. The undercover operation, born from a frank conversation with her ailing father, had been intended as a study in corporate culture. It became a masterclass in corporate cruelty. Her second week brought the slow, methodical torment of Elliot Monroe, the marketing VP. He forced her to clean and re-clean his already spotless office for 2 hours, creating messes just to critique her effort, weaponizing feedback under the guise of detail orientation. Imani used the time to place a small, hidden recorder in her cleaning cart, capturing his arrogant late-night monologues about thinking post-Benjamin and how he, Colin, and Bianca were on board to seize control. The reckoning crystallized on Thursday when she sought help from Natalie Evans, VP of HR. Imani recounted Colin's water incident. Natalie, whose office was lined with Your Voice Matters posters, responded with a sympathetic smile. That sounds unpleasant. But Colin's role involved a lot of pressure. Sometimes things can be taken personally when they weren't meant that way. My advice, focus on your work. He pushes because he expects excellence. The soft dismissal, the erasure of abuse as a misunderstanding, was the final betrayal. Imani's hidden phone recorded the entire conversation. The enemy wasn't just individuals. It was the system that protected them. The final straw came on the 38th floor. Imani entered the Regency room for a scheduled deep clean. Bianca Sterling, the formidable senior VP of Global Sales, stormed in, declaring she had a private call. When Imani politely cited company protocol, Bianca slapped her across the face. "Don't you ever talk back to me again," Bianca hissed. "You are nothing here. Do you understand that?" "Nothing." Imani stood firm, the sting across her cheek fueling a cold resolve. She didn't scream. She reached up and tapped the pinhole camera stitched beneath the flap of her janitor's badge. It had captured the entire incident. The physical assault, the chilling words, the silence of the three junior associates who saw everything and looked away. The next morning, the Sterling Horizon board gathered for an emergency session. Colin, Elliot, and Bianca sat around a walnut table, radiating composure. The door opened, and Imani Carter walked in, pushing her cleaning cart. Confusion, then disbelief, rippled through the room. Imani parked the cart, pulled down her uniform zipper, and stepped out to reveal a tailored navy blazer. "I'm Imani Carter," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "Vice President of Innovation, and for the past 3 weeks, I've been working undercover as a cleaner." She projected the footage, Colin's abuse, Elliot's psychological games, and finally, Bianca's slap, all clearly captured. Then, she presented the financial evidence. The ghost vendors, the siphoned wellness budget, the coordinated conspiracy, the quiet coup engineered by the trio to destabilize her father and take control. For 3 weeks, I endured humiliation, racism, and physical assault, Imani stated, turning to the board. "What scares me is that this isn't shocking to most of you. You've seen pieces of this. You've ignored it. You've excused it. And that stops today." Benjamin Carter stood beside her. "Mr. Graves, Miss Sterling, Mr. Monroe," he announced, his voice low and final. "Your contracts are terminated effective immediately." As the stunned executives were escorted out by security, the room sat in a profound silence. Imani had not sought sympathy. She had gathered evidence. She had been under the system just long enough to understand how to break it. 3 weeks later, Imani Carter, the newly announced CEO, addressed the company. She spoke not of market strategy, but of dignity. She invited the entire night crew onto the stage, their former invisibility, now their greatest strength. She announced a complete cultural overhaul, tying executive compensation to employee feedback and ensuring full benefits and recognition for all frontline staff. Her final message was clear. The culture of a company doesn't live in its mission statement. It lives in its kitchens, its elevators, its break rooms at midnight. And from now on, our culture will reflect not just who we are, but who we choose to be. Imani Carter, the janitor who became CEO, had finished her cleaning. She hadn't just changed the mission. She had restored the soul of Sterling Horizon. The journey from the bottom rung to the top had taught her that true leadership begins not at the head of the table, but with the people who keep the foundation clean. She had not only inherited a company, she had redeemed it.